77 years ago, a line was drawn on a map, a line that sliced across the Indian subcontinent and created two brand new nations. Now, this was supposed to be a moment of incredible freedom, but it spiraled into one of the greatest tragedies in modern history. The consequences of that single line, the Partition of India, are still shaping our world today. So, let's get into it.
To even begin to understand partition, you have to start with the human cost. Just look at this number, 15 to 20 lakh people. That's 1.5 to 2 million people killed in the violence that just exploded across the country. It's a number so huge, it's almost impossible to really feel its weight.
And then you hear phrases like this, and suddenly that abstract number becomes terrifyingly real. Survivors of partition talk about these ghost trains pulling into stations, silent, and filled not with living passengers, but with bodies. It's a horrifying image, and it forces you to ask the question, how on earth did it come to this? How did neighbors, people who had lived together for centuries, turn on each other with such fury?
Well, to answer that, we've got to go back, way back. Because the seeds of this division, they weren't planted overnight. They were sown, bit by bit, over decades. It all started in the early 20th century, when the very first cracks in the idea of a united India began to show. You can almost see the dominoes fall here. It kicks off in 1905. The British split the massive province of Bengal. Now, their official reason was, it's just for administrative efficiency. But what it really did was divide the population, right down the middle, along religious lines. And what happens next? Well, just 1 year later, the All India Muslim League is formed. Their argument? The main political party, the Indian National Congress, is basically a Hindu party, and Muslims need their own separate voice. And then in 1909, the British make this division official with a brand new political tool called separate electorates.
So what in the world are separate electorates? Well, imagine an election today where your religion decides everything. It decides who you can vote for, and it even decides who is allowed to run for office in your area. This completely changed the political game. Why? Because suddenly politicians didn't need to appeal to everyone. They just needed to appeal to their own religious community.
Let's break it down, because this is super important. In a special designated area, Step 1, only Muslim candidates could even be on the ballot. And Step 2, in that exact same area, only Muslim citizens were allowed to cast a vote. So yeah, it guaranteed some Muslim representation, for sure. But what it also did was build political walls between people. It segregated Indians at the ballot box.
And as you can imagine, this growing political divide gave rise to two really powerful and, in the end, totally incompatible ideas about what a free India should even look like. This right here was the central fight, the ideological battle that would define everything that came next.
So you had two opposing teams. On one side, the Indian National Congress, with leaders like Gandhi and Nehru. Their vision was simple. One single, secular, united India where people of all religions could live together. But on the other side, the Muslim League started pushing what became known as the two-nation theory. And this was the complete opposite. It was the idea that Hindus and Muslims weren't just two religions. They were two separate nations that simply couldn't coexist in one country. And here is one of the biggest ironies in this entire story. The man who would become the face of the two-nation theory, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, was once a key member of the Congress Party. In fact, he was famously called the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity. Think about that for a second. The very man who would go on to create Pakistan was once seen as the great unifier. His personal and political transformation is absolutely central to understanding how all of this happened. You know, the idea of Pakistan didn't just pop up out of nowhere. You can see how it gained momentum over time. In 1930, it's just a philosophical idea from a poet. By 1933, it actually has a name, Pakistan. Then, a politically changed Jinnah comes back to India in 34 to lead the Muslim League and turns this idea into a real movement. And finally, in 1940, it's made official. The Muslim League passes the Lahore Resolution, and the demand for a separate nation is formally on the table. So now you have both sides completely dug in. The political process starts to completely break down. And meanwhile, the British are exhausted from World War II and are basically looking for the exit door, which just cranks up the pressure on everyone. The stage was set for a truly tragic and violent showdown. Before the British could pack their bags and leave, one massive question had to be answered. Who truly spoke for India's Muslims? Was it the Congress Party with its dream of a united India? Or was it the Muslim League with its demand for Pakistan? The make-or-break provincial elections in 1946 were going to be the ultimate test.
The results? Well, they were staggering. And they were crystal clear in how divided they were. The Congress Party absolutely crushed it in the general constituencies. But, and this is a huge but, the Muslim League won over 90% of the seats that were specifically reserved for Muslims. So the election didn't give a clear winner, it just gave a picture of a clear divide. Both sides could now legitimately say, our people are with us.
And this result, of course, led to a complete and total deadlock. The British tried one last, desperate plan. It was called the Cabinet Mission, a super complicated proposal for a united India, but with a really weak central government. But honestly, it was too little, too late. Nobody was willing to compromise anymore, and the whole thing just fell apart. So, with all the political options pretty much exhausted, Jinnah decided to raise the stakes. He called for a direct action day. The goal was to show the strength and solidarity of the Muslim demand for Pakistan. It was a really vague but also a really ominous-sounding call to action. Nobody really knew what direct action was supposed to look like. They found out with horrifying speed. In Calcutta, Direct Action Day descended into a complete bloodbath. It was days of horrific communal rioting that left thousands of people dead. This wasn't a political protest anymore. It was a total breakdown of society. And that violence, it spread like a wildfire across northern India. For the next year, the country just bled. That violence changed absolutely everything. Now, the British were desperate to get out, and the Indian leadership was just desperate to stop the killing. The debate was no longer if India should be partitioned. The only questions left were how and how fast. With the subcontinent literally on fire, the British government in London made a decision. Prime Minister Clement Attlee set a hard deadline. He announced that Britain would be leaving India by June 1948, no matter what. This forced everyone's hand. Either they find a solution or they face complete and total anarchy. The clock was officially ticking. The new viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, was sent in to basically manage the exit. He took one look around and decided partition was the only way out of the mess. His plan was brutally simple. Create two countries, India and Pakistan. Divide the huge, populous provinces of Punjab and Bengal right down the middle. And here's the kicker. He moved the date for independence up, not to 1948, but to August 1947, just a few months away. I mean, this just gives you a sense of how surreal the whole task was. They didn't just divide the land. They divided everything. The army, the treasury, the entire civil service. They even divided office supplies. It said that every single table, every chair, every typewriter was meticulously accounted for and split between the two new nations. But the most important division of all, the actual border, was done with shocking, almost criminal haste. The man given the job of drawing a line that would determine the fate of millions was a British lawyer named Cyril Radcliffe. And get this, he had never been to India before in his life. He was given just a few weeks, some outdated maps, and census data to carve up villages, rivers, and families that had been there for centuries. And this is where the planning becomes truly catastrophic. Just look at these dates. August 14th, 1947, Pakistan celebrates its independence. Great. The next day, August 15th, India celebrates its independence. Wonderful. But the final border, the actual line, it wasn't announced until 2 days later, on August 17th. For 2 full days, millions of people were celebrating freedom without knowing which country they were actually in. So when that line was finally revealed, all hell broke loose. People who went to sleep on August 16th, thinking they were in India, woke up on the 17th to find out their village was now in Pakistan, and vice versa. A panicked, desperate exodus began in both directions. And this triggered the very violence we talked about at the beginning. This wasn't just a migration. It was a desperate fight for survival. In the end, the story of partition is a story of impossible choices made under unimaginable pressure. It's a story of freedom that was gained, but at the cost of unity. And it's a story of independence that was born in horrific bloodshed. It leaves all of us, even today, with a heavy question that echoes through history. What is the true cost in human lives of drawing a line on a map?